Uganda is a country with one of the youngest populations in the world. And today, here at the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Gardens, I am privileged to be sitting with one young gentleman who is working very hard in the areas of championing causes for young people and ensuring that their issues get the attention they deserve. He's none other than Mr. Jacob Eyeru, who is the chairperson of the National Youth Council. Mr. Eyeru, you're most welcome.
Thank you, Judith. My generation would say, "What's up?" But thank you.
I wouldn't respond that way. And a lot of people are quite familiar with the work you do at the National Youth Council. Could you briefly tell us about yourself, just for the benefit of those who may not know or be familiar with you?
The National Youth Council of Uganda is a body corporate who were brought out by Parliament, statutory instrument for those that like the law. But really, for the lay young person out there, the National Youth Council is a body that unites all of you and speaks for all of us. I would say our responsibility is threefold. It comes from Section 3 of our Act, and that's one, to unify the young people. So we have a sense of unity. If you want to talk to the youth, who do you speak to? And that represents everyone. It doesn't necessarily mean we've consulted everyone, but delegated power. Then we also engage young people in activities of benefit. If you are a farmer, if we have a program in entrepreneurship, in agriculture, then we've engaged you. That kind of approach is our role. And finally, we protect young people from marginalization. So you'll see us on TV fighting very many times to warn minister so-and-so, warn security agency this and that for a breach here or a breach there, just to save young people from manipulation and some sort of intimidation.
Wow. I've also learned that recently you've been quite busy moving around, engaging your constituents, your stakeholders, and all your structures, right from the grassroots to the national level. You've been having sessions here and meetings here and there that have resulted into certain concrete issues that you want to push forward. Could you just tell us about some of these meetings and sessions you've been holding across the country?
The National Youth Council will hold at least one National Delegates Conference. What we actually were discussing were issues that were voices of young people, what they're experiencing, their truths today, and in very many senses, they were reflective of what we actually expect, what we know, but also they were surprising to display what young people have become, the responsibilities they have taken on for their communities and their societies. For me, that reflects a lot of hope in them. But young people also as concerned about the status of their own education. In some sense, education was a very big factor in the conversations. It was the voices of young people from Karamoja for the insecurity in Karamoja, and the voices of young people from Greater Masaka for their own insecurity that came out strongest on issues of insecurity. Then there were issues of government involvement of young people in what young people do. There were issues around how young people's talents are developed. So these issues of young people came out very strongly among their voices.
What then are young people pushing for when it comes to advocating for issues of education beyond the hopelessness or sense of helplessness?
Yeah.
Is there hope for them?
We as young people really can push the button that will enable the change that we want to see. And that button, if it is government that we need to push that. Because for the young person that's in Kampala and was attending one of the top schools, education is always visible, for whatever amount of closing time. There's always a possibility of education. But for the young person whose only hope is the opening of a universal primary or secondary school, for that young person whose hope is in that rural school that their parents can afford, the hope in education, for example, is to ensure that there is a quick reopening, dependent on sheer will to reopen education and not dependent on science of some sort that might not be available to us in the near future. And so for us as a National Youth Council, we take on the representative voice of those young people, not on the representative voice of the people that explain why young people can't get what they want. We try to find the middle ground between what we want and what the explanation is. We don't represent the explanation, we represent the hopes of the young people.
Okay. beyond the resolutions that you people have put on paper, which I must really commend the National Youth Council for, but beyond these resolutions, what next?
Well, what next is really what everyone does when they make serious decisions in the boardroom. The next thing is to hit the ground. And so for us, hitting the ground looks like looking for duty bearers. Who is the Minister of Education? Ask for engagement with them, present to them your views. We're not saying they will be taken or they will be implemented. We're saying we'll do our part of pushing for them to be heard and ensuring that our agency is noticed. And so for us, that is the next step. How do you get the duty bearer to hear the young person, but in the authentic voice of hope, in the authentic voice of reason, but much more in the authentic voice, in our case, of representation of their voice? That really is our next step.
So, if you are to say a few words or your parting shot to any young person between the ages of, say, 15 to 30 or 18 to 30 who would be watching this right now, what
Yeah.
would be those few words you tell them?
Our country is young. As young people, the country will be built by us. The determination of how Uganda operates will be defined by us. And so our generation can be a generation that creates the difference we need, or it can be the generation that continues the indifference we have. I think it should be the former.
Thank you very much, Jacob, for your
Thank you,
time.
Judith. It's a pleasure to always be with you.
Look forward to having you again.